to the Gambian people, says the Director of Health Promotion and Education, Modou Njie, during an exclusive interview with the Fatu Network. These and more coming up on the show, but first we'll take a look at the newspapers. The Standard newspaper is reporting 4 years of President Adama Barrow on a microscope, a tale of successes and failures. Lawyer Jabati denies receiving money by false pretense. And PPP will not contest December presidential elections. Jah Oil protest against $1 million fine. Government asked to explain role in deportation of Gambians from EU. Let's take a look at some of these stories in detail. 4 years ago, a new president, Adama Barrow, was inaugurated in Senegal to replace Yahya Jammeh, who lost the 2016 presidential election. Jammeh initially refused to hand over power, but the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, intervened with threats of a military action before he relinquished power and fled into exile. Mr. Barrow became president at the head of a coalition government which was sworn in January 2017. As he marks 4 years in office on January 19, 2021, the Standard sought opinion of political parties, activists and supporters of the president on the achievement or otherwise of the Gambia's third president. The United Democratic Party Administrative Secretary, Legal and Human Rights Affairs Alma Metal said, beyond the divergent views and the peace that continue to exist, this government has demonstrated ineptitude on a scale that is really scandalous. Tal added that the constitutional and institutional reforms that Gambians were putting their hopes on have been an unmitigated failure. And the leader of the GMC, Mayor Ahmed Fati, in his comments on President Barrow's 4 years, said, this government was elected on one thing only and nothing more. We campaigned on a reform agenda and the voters affirmed. So we came on a 3-year plan to make profound reforms as the most important mandate, he added. The APRC, meanwhile, Deputy Spokesperson Dudu Jah said much was expected of the coalition government, but despite receiving overwhelming support from the international community, little of the expectation has been realized by this government. Jah Oil protest against $1 million fine. The Jah Oil management has accused Pura of targeting the petroleum company after the regulatory authority fined it over $1 million for alleged violations. Last week, Pura announced it has fined Jah Oil after concluding that the company built a petrol station without a permit from the authority. The authority also ordered the company to halt the construction of at least 2 petrol stations, one on Kairaba Avenue and one in Weli Ngara. The company reacted to the development with its manager, Mamadou Haidara, telling QTV his company is being targeted by the authority. We wrote a protest letter to Pura protesting their enforcement, and at the same time, we've also written a letter to the Ministry of Petroleum to inquire into this matter because the way we see it, we are a victim, he told the TV. Government asked to explain role in deportation of Gambians. A group concerned Gambians against deportation has written to the government asking it to explain the resumption of deportations of Gambians from Europe. Germany recently sent back 20 Gambians, a move that caused consternation among Gambians both home and abroad, but the government has not said much, if anything at all, about the issue. According to the group, it is expecting a reaction from the government of the Gambia. We, the concerned Gambians against deportation, are aware of the resumption of the deportation of our Gambian brothers and sisters from Europe, especially Germany, after a moratorium on deportation was announced in 2019 by the government of the Gambia and Germany. The group said in a statement signed by the chairman, Omar Saho Kamara, shared with the Standard newspaper. Lawyer Jabati denies receiving money by pretense. Former Justice Minister Lamin Jabati has described as inaccurate reports that he was remanded on bail for allegedly receiving money by false pretense. The former Attorney General also said media reports that he received a little over $500,000 on false pretext of selling a plot of land in an area at the center of dispute between Job Kunda family of Serekunda and Jata Kunda clan of Busumbala are not equally true. The police spokesperson Lamin Jai confirmed to this paper the police were in receipt of records about the filing of a complaint at the Lateria police station against the ex-justice minister on allegations of receiving money by false pretense. But in a strong rebuttal, Jabate said, "Let me make it abundantly clear that at no time did I obtain any monies by false pretenses." Meanwhile, the People's Progressive Party will not contest a December presidential election. The interim leader of the People's Progressive Party has revealed that his party will not contest in the forthcoming presidential elections slated for December. Keba Jallow was speaking on the sidelines of the party's biennial regional congress held at Brikama Bar on Saturday. Mr. Jallow said the PPP is likely to back one of the presidential candidates, most likely President Adama Barrow's National People's Party. Goodluck Jonathan's Gambia mission bearing fruits. That's according to IDEA. The auxiliary role played by the former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan towards resuscitating the stalled constitutional review process has begun to bear fruits. The head of International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance IDEA, Mr. Adebayo Olukushi, said in a statement issued on Monday, IDEA, the agency that provides the main technical backup to the mission, said Gambian political parties and parliamentarians are now determined to cooperate and resolve the bottlenecks restricting the adoption of a new constitution for the Gambia. That's it for the Standard newspaper. Let's take a look at what the point is reporting. Gambia faces high risk of ecological catastrophe. Honorable CDA Jatta accuses Barrow Dabo for killing 2016 coalition. Barrow returns gratitude after 4 years of a presidency. Activist condemns indiscriminate dumping at Tanje Beach. Let's take a look at some of those stories. The Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, Fafa Sanyang, has warned that the Gambia faces high risk of ecological catastrophe if the necessary countermeasures are not taken soon. He made this statement at the launching of the nationwide awareness-raising campaign and distribution of efficient cook stoves held at the Petroleum House yesterday. Sidya Jatta, chairperson of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, a party, and also the NAM for Woolly West, has stated that President Adama Barrow caused the sudden death of the coalition 2016 and its burial administered by UDP leader Honorable Ousainou Darboe. The coalition died the moment President Barrow deviated from how cabinet should be formed, and the UDP leader Ousainou Darboe then buried it when he said he would sue anyone who said President Barrow should step down after 3 years. Sidya Jatta was speaking in an exclusive interview, of course, with the Fatu Network, where he spoke on the issue of the coalition for the first time in few years. Activists condemn indiscriminate dumping at Tanje Beach. The country coordinator of the Gambia Ozone Heroes has expressed dismay at recent indiscriminate dumping of waste at Tanje Fish landing site, saying it poses a threat to aquatic sea lives. Last week, a heap of waste at the Tanje Fish landing site with a stream of disposed plastic bags, bottles and organic materials appeared on social media, with many environmental activists blaming the country's National Environment Agency for letting such a thing happen, while calling for the laws to be enforced to save our marine resources. That's pretty much for the newspapers. Let's go for a break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. January 19, 2021 marked President Barrow's 4 years in office, and Gambians share their views on his government's performance since assuming office. Jaka Sisajaite tells us more.
Parfum, the first perfume bar in Gambia. By Parfum moo leen indil beneen façon parfum sa boutique bu rafet bu yanj bu mucc ayib ca By Parfum di nga fa fekk ay cuuraay yu amul fenn te naturel cëm ak seddaay bi boole si nag air freshener yu doy waar mel ni Venus, Flora, Fresh 24 ay wuñu parfum bu classique waaye it bàyyi wuñu yi nga xam ne ñoo gën a famous si àdduna bi Oud Private Collection ak yeneen yu am solo. For the first time ñëw leen ngeen découvrir Parfum Bar mbir mu bees si àdduna bi tànnal sa flavor bu la neex. By Parfum ñu ngi nekk 54 Kairaba Avenue opposite American Embassy mën ngeen ñëw woo ci 77 00035 wala 529 1888.
Watanbe, brought to you by Afrisa.
Be part of the amazing conversations with Gambia's greatest minds and personalities. Get ready to be entertained, inspired, and motivated on the Watanbe platform. Plus, stand a chance of winning the shopping of your life. Call or SMS 1010 for $3 is only to win cash prizes and a free shopping spree.
Join Watanbe live on GRTS and social media on Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. Kailin New Watan.
Where AfriCell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Welcome back. We apologize for quoting that report short. It seems we are experiencing some technical difficulties here in the studio. Meanwhile, we'll move to our next report. Statistics have revealed that apart from agriculture, tourism is the second highest foreign exchange earner for the Gambia. But the emergence of the COVID-19 has changed that narrative as the industry experienced inadequate tourist arrivals. Usman Jatta took time to survey the impact of the pandemic on the industry by visiting the Bakau Craft Market, and he now reports.
The tourism season is always a beautiful season for the smiling coast of the Gambia, as it is a time which attracts tourists from different European countries, ranging from the United Kingdom, the Scandinavians, and the like. And today we are at the Bakau Craft Market, one of the most famous craft markets in the country when it comes to tourist attraction and the selling of artifacts to tourists. Join me inside to know more about this year's tourism season, which came at a time when the world is grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's go inside to know what happens.
Well, we can say this year there's no tourism. There's no tourist season.
Why do you mean when you say this year there is no tourism season?
Because why? Everybody knows. It's because of this COVID-19. Close all the seasons. Not only Gambia here, but all over the world. So things are not working. So no, there's no tourism. Now we just sitting here, but there's no tourism. Yeah. Well, what we expect from the government, I will just let them to know that there's no tourism. So our season is not working. So all over the year, no tourism. Because we can say now maybe 9 to 10 or 12 months, no tourism. So, and the season have to open October. They say they cannot open October. Maybe they say January. This January, another new cases also come out. So there's nothing.
The Gambia tourism season usually begins in late October and normally lasts for a period of 6 months.
To better curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, global travel restrictions were introduced, and this has seriously affected traveling around the world. And as we see, this artisan sitting here has been sitting here for hours without receiving customers. And according to the few artisans that we have spoken to, they have indicated to us that a business is not working as expected, as some of them are claiming that this year there is no tourism season.
Système bi nag nu ma ko gisee dafa metti trop affaire coronavirus bi nu mu ñëwee moom affaire bi dafa difficult trop ñun dee jaay marché ma amul client amul tubaab ñëwut this year affaire bi noonu laa ko gisee
definitely tourism bi fu mu nekk nii mu ngi dool because mbas bi dafa lambe àdduna bi yëpp so da nga gis nga market bi naka la mel ñun ñu ngi toog so doo gis dara da ngay ubbi from 7 to 7 but doo gis benn customer waaw easywul ci ñun nag easywul dafa metti.
Emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic has put the world in a different direction. It has changed the storyline for many businesses. It has not only affected the business sector, it has affected agriculture and many other sectors. And here at the craft market, craft vendors would have to sit for hours without receiving customers, days without seeing a tourist coming out to buy their artifacts, which is a new thing for them. And the emergence of a COVID-19, no one was not prepared to face a COVID-19. Dreams and hopes were shattered. Indeed, these times shall be remembered in the history books of the world. Reporting for Fatu Network News Review, Usman Jata.
Welcome back, and now we'll visit our first story that we started with. January 19, 2021 marked President Barrow's 4 years in office, and Gambians share their views on his government's performance since assuming office. Jakasi Jaite tells us more.
Hello, I am Jaka CCJT and welcome to another Vox Pop on the Fatu Network. As you all know, yesterday marked 4 years since President Adama Barrow took over power, and this is 2021, the year of elections. Now we're here on the streets of Bakau to gauge the opinions of the people regarding these topics. Let's see what they have to say.
Ñun suñu gis daal si 4 years am bi daal try na trop because we gis ne lot of changes si dëkk bi lu moo nekk di def ngay defar yoon yi ngay defar yeneen progress yi so suñu gis daal try na because yàggut a toog understand nga it's a new president also dafa ñëw fekk affaire yëpp mu ngi dang fu nekk nii so moom mu ngi try pour te am nañu yaakaar si moom daal dina nekk koo xam ne dina mën a liggéey dëkk bi am nañu yaakaar trop si moom léena rek laa mën a wax ñu wut si tamit ñu si gannaawam tey ñu si gannaawam ëllëg waaw ñun moom leen àndal daal he's doing well in this country as we can see te he's a very good president also we can see
4 years taamam bi daal man kay gisuma benn changes foofu yaa jàmme fu mu bàyyee sax yaa jàmme fu mu ko bàyyee sax moom moo gën a gën sax because 4 years Barrow bi di was 4 years defi mu toog 4 years bi dara improvement benn improvement nekkut fa soo demee si medical sector bi si health sector bi di worst soo demee si service sector bi di worst education sector di worst marché bi moo waxi noppi soo amul dara amul benn achievement bu mu defal benn changes because Gambien yi dañ war a ubbi seen bot ñu seet fu mu nekk nii jamono bu mu tollu nii dund bu ñu nekk di dunda sax dafa metti
ndela miro ndemam fenje kadu Barrow bira nata jang akab manu data lala manu ben 1100 ya jamme abula woloto Barrow man fenkata say manu tara 1350 so umna kuti obekala mine umna kuti amam fengo feneke jang ngasi ni mena reform fem amam fengo feneke
4 years bi alhamdulillah rabbil alamin deka bangi am jama pare mu ngi try so maa ngi ci bëggee tamit torop waaye leena laa dee gis tamit ñun yuut si den dee sonal soo ko ñun drive ay over sona te den ko dee saanil carte so na try mu gestu ñu tamit tuuti help me den sona dañoo try mu jàppale ñu torop te ñun tam ñu ko yokkal ñaan yes kontaan naa nag si 4 years bi because dëkk bi am jaama kay alhamdulillah rabbil alamin ngay wax sant yàlla bu baax
baro la ñom 4 years o kay ndila diam man siyaje na diamo te jam fala fana bandama fenne ji ya me yalon ko ñom 4 years o ay kata ko mulke mo sa kibirno men na ya fa ka baro ya kata man woje folo ñum ala 4 years o kono
bakaw nak mom may gis fi yena place yo xamne I was very surprised because am na more than I can say 30 something years mu ngi mel nonu defarun ko understand so mom nga xamne ñew na bi wala 4 years am bi ni rek change na yoon yi nekk bir bakaw yeb like old Cape Point ak this Johnson Gage fi ak bakaw sancha wa ci tali bi nonu all those street are changes so demé right now da nga fekk ñi ngi defare so we can say there is a changes because yaga ne fi ken defaru ko more than 30 something years I can say so luñ gis ci mom daal mo def daal faj nañu torop te am nañ yaakaar ci mom daal waaw ñun daal am nañ yaakaar ci mom torop nak mom he's a good president
folo kanta min nyilinka ala yin sanji nani siya kono baro kabir nga be sila banko kan aning agenda min nata aning ay kuma kan min fo moli aning bimbe bimin kono you understand ate kuma kan min fo moli you understand ay hobe drop le baro la mituno baro ya tandila ala mituno to ay tandile ko abe mano tala le ay tandi ko nanata you understand abe gambe no nyafita le baro nata man gambe no nyafita anata man mano tala you understand nte first of all nte karre fo ay min kam because nte mudim batel pour bata min bem kan 22 years nga bata min soto you understand nim baro nata no wo bata wosi bon kam bar kabirin baro nata no it's just like from frying pan to the fire
société Gambia dafa wara develop bu passé ni sax even sun depend ci mbiri ay tuba bi sax Gambia rek sun économie bi ni port rek KMC ñoo ñu war na develop Gambia to standard suñ amé jiit bu baax waaye jiit bu nekk ko fi tek place mu enu ko ye mu lekk ko bugut xejal keneen sax so lool moo tax Gambia du mun a develop Gambia lii moo ñu sonal dañu war a seega ñu seet ñu nga xam ne honest people yi ñu nga xam ne dañ pare pour liggéey ñu taana ñoo ñu def ko président wala ñu de waaye achievement Barrow kay man gisuma benn achievement gisuma benn improvement dara improve fii xanaa mu ngee gën a from -0 to downward mu ngee dem rek soo dañ war a ubbi suñu bot ñu seet ñu seega ñu taana si nit ku baax nji bu baax ndaa ñu mun a develop ñun tam koo fi teg place nanguta liggéey from liggéeyal poosam bi famille am loolu la muy liggéey waaye loolu nag du yóbbu dëkk kanam
te ñun nag gis nañ ne mu ngi góorgóorlu nekkul bakaw rek yeneen dëkk yi sax ma leen noo ca fa mu leen noo defar so loolu yëpp is all surprises to ñu ne war a xam loolu because Yaya Jammeh mu ngi woon fii 20 something years ruul na fi waaye bakaw musu koo defar te moom waaye bakaw la woon fii waaye Barrow nekkul waaye bakaw moom dafa ñëw mu defar fii because xoolu ne kon like élection la nii dafa ñëw mu ñëw daal defar dëkk bi daal
dama bugga pour ñu change of government bi na change at least ñu taana mu nga xam ne lu mun a develop ku pare pour liggéeyal Gambia waaye du nguur bii nii moom dañu feel bii moom develop bu dara bii ñoom dañ mel ni ay comme daal fu ñuy wane comme kaci kali bambol ye daale yele fem bukatambi fem fendi naate abule kan kon so wolo ñelti ñi Barrow man sakunda
man daal dama yaakaar daal mu am victory daal yes ñun yusi de si moom leen nekk de yusi si gannaaw leen nekk dinañ ko jàppale su soobee yàlla inshallah moom leen bëgg tamit mu toogaat because am nañ yaakaar si moom because nit soo gisee mu ngi góorgóorlu bu ko jëmaale xee dimbale ko ndax mu mun a góorgóorlu continuer góorgóorlu waaye soo gisee mu ngi góorlu nga ne da nga koo iñaane dafa su toogee keneen ñëw balaa kooku ma xam ne bu mu amee balaa keneen di ko jëlaat dafay yaaga understand waaye olof jaay dafa ne soo gisee koy góorgóorlu dimbale ko moo gën nga koy yaaxaan
élection nga men expect nga men ko Yaya Jammeh mo kala Barrow la Yaya Jammeh dama ne on so Barrow bu boy ni sifa kala warna bakel abu boy la do ke ñam abu boy la
this man is working very hard te dañ war a génn ñu support ko understand nga man daal ku ko support man daal support naa te man suma boy si yaa ngi fii I have my delegation around here we will give him big support in this country here yeah
te yàlla na win waaw yàlla na win man dama ko dee saanil kar waaw dama ko saanil time oga ma saanil musuma saanil Yaya Jammeh kar waaye moom dama ko saanil first time for my life
ta pour Gambia banko ka bondi dinko ko ngani na saya lela na saya dawda ngani na saya lela ka bondi dinko ko no ko yawda tan kana ka lo ndikara ni mom ila fa ko ngela rek ta fa ngani na saya la woni woto belari wala nyama
mansa kunda nyanta falina lek ni mansa wonteng nyindo ninga 5 years do di nyonna pombe laba na poti sada dano laba wala munna bari nyi wonteng nyindo nyilbe domoro doronela anim pati wo doronela ya jame fo pati ke bari nyi letam bita wala nyil wo kay mantara fenela jam nyil wo kay nyil yeta dek nte manke oppositional de ndem businessman hold.
As President Barrow's 4 years in office might have brought about hope to some citizens, it has also brought disappointments, as some people had more expectations for change than what they have experienced during the past 4 years. Now, this year's election should be one that every Gambian should look forward to. Reporting for the Fatu Network News Review, Jaka CCJT.
Tough Africa Global presents the new Tulip Gardens. Tough Tulip Gardens is set to comprise service plots in sizes ranging from 220 to 570 meters square. Deposit as low as $83,600 is only an 18-month interest-free payment plan with only 20% deposit on the service plots. Please contact 376-2333 or 776-2333. Free. Tough Africa.
Welcome back. The Gambia, like many countries, is seeing a rise in COVID cases. We'll start with the Director of Health Promotion and Education as he discusses government's effort to vaccinate the entire population, among others. More in this. The Gambia is seeing an increase in COVID-19 cases as a second wave of infections sweeps the continent and the world at large. A relaxation of lockdowns and the public's loosening of precautionary behaviors has seen recorded cases rise, forcing many governments to clamp down hard. The Director of Health Promotion and Education, Mamadou Njai, gives us the situational report as of today, January 28th, and tells us what they are doing to tackle what could be a possible second wave. Welcome to the Fatu Network, Mr. Njai. To start with, can you give us an insight on the situational report as of today?
With regards to the situational analysis for the 18th of January 2021, which is regarded as our 258th situational report. They are moving a lot, so we are having every day, or every two other day, we have the report. And this report indicates that we have recorded as a country 5 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the Gambia, bringing to a total number of 3,938 confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 in the Gambia. Of the 5 positive cases we have recorded, 2 of them have a history of traveling from a hotspot country. This doesn't mean that those 2 people are positive with the new variant, as many people may think. They are just positive, but the other procedures also are following. Because they come from hotspot areas, the investigation will still continue, and the sequencing will be done, and then the laboratory will get back to us with regards to the results of their analysis. Out of that number, 250 samples were collected, laboratory samples were collected and tested. As I mentioned earlier, 5 turned out to be positive. We used to have a less number of people who volunteer to test, but because also we are having, borders have opened, and people started traveling, airspace have been open, people started traveling, and it's a requirement before somebody travel, you must have to provide at least 72-hour PCR negative test result to the country you are going. But it has been a challenge for many because of the fact that now that we're having a large number of people that are coming, but our idea of encouraging voluntary testing is something that we have been talking about, but we still have seen a large, lesser number of people being tested. So having 250, last sample we also had was about 638 samples, and prior to that we also have about 407 samples that were collected. This is these are the trend. But it's also indicating that, yes, we are having many people are also coming to test, which is also a good sign. Meaning the media and other people are also helping us in spreading the message for people to come out in their numbers to get tested. So this is something that we want to thank the public. But we want to say that we need to increase that number. I mean, having about 2.2 million people, for example, in the Gambia, you have only about less than 40,000 people that have been tested. So you can see that's still something that we need to work on. So having you here, I am sure you're also going to be our advocate and as our ambassador in trying to encourage your colleagues, peers, and friends for them to, at least go for voluntary testing in the sites we have identified. That is the stadium, and also at the turntable and other sample collection sites we have also identified across the country.
So it seems like the Gambia at some point flattened the curve on the number of COVID-19 cases, and now we are seeing a rise as the world deals with a second wave. Is that the case in the Gambia? Do we call this a second wave?
Other countries around us are are experiencing the second wave because they almost flatten the curve. Basically, that also is a signal for us that we almost flatten our curve also, epidemiological curve, at the beginning, around October, November, and now we have seen a bit of an increase in the number of cases. We had a single digit at the beginning, but now we also have double digit, but now 16, 19, 21, and then now we have day before yesterday, the weekend report, we had 23 confirmed cases. And then today we had a single digit. That was yesterday for the 18th of January. We had 5 confirmed cases. Perhaps we might be there. We might get a bit down, or we might go up a bit. So we are monitoring the situation. And then we don't want to go to a situation where we will register a larger number of people, larger number of cases at the same time. And if that happens, then that means we are going to be involved in firefighting, and we don't want to go into that. That is why we had to build our strategies. We had to strengthen the existing strategy we already put in place. That is why, key among them, we're trying to strengthen collaboration between the Gambian authorities and the Senegalese authorities. We recently concluded a meeting between Gambian authorities and then Senegalese authorities on the POEs, that's a point of entries. And how do we strengthen the point of entry? We also shared best practices. There are good things that are happening in Senegal. Equally, also there are good things that are also happening in Gambia. So we are able to share our experiences in those ones. So we are almost all ready in trying to make sure that we flatten the curve. This is something that is already ongoing, and we are happy that the cross-border collaboration has been strengthened. We also strengthen capacities of our existing staff in the areas of case management, in the areas of surveillance, at the laboratory, and as well as also contact tracing and rapid response. We've also increased our areas of strategy of risk communication and community engagement, and then these areas have been strengthened. We know that we have been doing a lot of work in this area, so what we did was to re-strategize our interventions. And then we also make sure that we engage the local authorities. This is all part of our plan. Knowing that we might go into a second wave, we are not also declaring at the moment to say we are in the second wave, but we might go into it. So before we go into it, we need to get prepared. And that's why we were in this, we are prepared since day one. And now what we are now doing is to review our actions we have been taking, our strategy we have been applying, our approaches, and see which areas, and in fact to identify the gaps and building on our strengths in certain areas. So this is exactly what we are doing now.
And as far as the new variant is concerned, what do we know about that?
These are 2 confirmed for now. As I said, the other 2 that has been reported yesterday, they are not confirmed for the new variant yet. We are getting info, but they are they've been tested positive for COVID-19. and then the investigator will still go further to see, or after maybe when the sequencing is done, and then the laboratory scientists will do their job, and they come back and tell us which of the categories they fall into. The two, as I speak to you now, they are receiving treatment at the treatment center, and they are responding to treatment. But when people heard about the new variant, the UK variant, which spread very fast, and then can kill faster, people were really panicked. And I think there were a lot of calls all over. People were worried. Many people decided to cancel their flights before they come to the Gambia. Because we have been following the communication in our Facebook page. And then we want to assure the public that with regards to those particular cases, the ministry have responded very well. Because we were able to locate them or track them as a result of our surveillance at the airport. That is why the issue of the mandatory quarantine was very helpful, because if we didn't put up those measures at the airport, perhaps we will not be able to detect them. So we are able to detect them. They've been tested, and they're proven to be positive, and they've been taken to the treatment center, and they are currently responding to treatment.
How effective is this mandatory quarantine? Because we've been hearing allegations from travelers visiting the country. Recently, someone reached out to the Fatu Network and said they were dumped at a hotel, and the only people who didn't go through the mandatory quarantine were the people who were able to pay their way out of the hotel. How do you respond to these allegations?
Actually, yes, we are also aware of some of those allegations. We are yet to verify, and when there are allegations, we must investigate. We will investigate those allegations and then find out whether they are really the realities on the ground. If yes, actions will be taken against those authorities. But also, I want to remind you, we are used to some of these actions from the communities or from the people traveling. Remember at the beginning when we had put up measures for quarantine, we had a lot of allegations. Our staff have been alleged to be doing all sorts of things, so corruption scandals and all those things. But those allegations came as a result of the fact that we have realized that many people don't want to go to quarantine. And the only thing they can do is to tarnish the image of our staff, those hardworking staff, those committed staff, at the airport who have been there having sleepless nights. Some of them have been harassed, but they all kept calm and quiet and then concentrated on their work. They've received all sorts of abusive languages. They've been harassed. Some of them to the extent that we've been trying to almost getting to them to attack them. But they've been maintaining their positions that they have to go to quarantine. So if somebody travels outside and then comes to the government, we've been asked to go to quarantine, the psychology, in fact, the fear of quarantine alone, people decide to say all sorts of stories about but we will investigate those allegations. The ministry will do that and then get back to the public on that. If they get the information, we will definitely get back to the public and inform them. When it comes to quarantine, we said it's a mandatory quarantine. But why people are also scared now, because they thought the mandatory quarantine is 14 days. In our press release, it is not indicating that we are going to keep them for 14 days. So when they come to the airport, despite the fact that they are coming with a negative test result, PCR negative test result, they still have to go through mandatory quarantine because they are coming from hotspot countries. That has been highlighted in our press release. And the press release also indicates that each of those people have to be responsible for their own cost. There's 2,300. But many thought that is 14 days. That is why there was all sort of noise around. Oh, I cannot pay this now. This is too long. Or I'm here for a wedding, or I'm here for a funeral, or I'm here to see a sick person. So I cannot be here for 14 days. Perhaps they did not understand, or they did not read through the press release. The press release clearly states that you'll be taken to quarantine, mandatory quarantine. When you are taken to that quarantine, your sample will be collected and taken for analysis, and then when your results is negative, then you'll be discharged to go home and meet your family. And if you are positive, then you go to the treatment center. Whether asymptomatic or symptomatic, you still have to be taken to the treatment center. That is what is clearly stated. And we want to assure people who are into business, people who intend to travel to the Gambia, that they should not cancel their flights because of this mandatory quarantine. The mandatory quarantine at most will be 24 hours. Like when you are for example, you travel with SM Brussels and you arrive in Banjul at 8:45, for example. And then before the procedures, before you complete the airport formalities, it might take some time. So therefore, you might arrive your hotel be around 10, 11. So by the time you reach there, then the lab will not be available, will not be able to come to the hotel at the time. But in the next morning, they'll be there to collect their samples. And if they collect your sample at that time in the morning, the following day you get your results. And if you get your results, you are negative, you are allowed to go home. So meaning we can say 24 hours at most. But some people also, yes, they said they've experienced long waiting hours before the sample collection teams come to collect their samples. We have discussed this, and we will rectify if there are gaps on our side. And if any of the travelers were offended with this, I think we will have to apologize in this area. That is not our intention as a ministry. Because we may also have some challenges here and there, either because we may have the staff that are covering there, may have a lot of areas to cover. The hotels, maybe there are 3 to 4 hotels, and the passengers could be reached of about maybe 100 to 200 people. So maybe only 4 or 5 people or 6 people doing that might be. So maybe they may have started from one hotel, and they are moving to the other hotel, and they move to another hotel. Perhaps that gap may have caused inconveniences on some people. Maybe the last hotel that they are supposed to go, they may not reach there on time, and they were expecting them. They might be expecting that they'll be going there in the morning. When they end up reaching there around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, perhaps these were some of the inconveniences. But we want to apologize if there are inconveniences. We are trying to adjust. As I said, COVID is a situation whereby every day we learn something. So as we are moving on, we learn, and when we identify challenges are there, we identify them and see we see how to respond to those challenges. So I think we have some gaps at some point, and then we're happy that the public, when they feel that we are not satisfying their needs, they can come up. But it has to be done in a way that it should be professionally done. It should be done in such a way that it doesn't, it will not create some, sort of confusion, between the two parties. So if we have issues, we have a Facebook page, and we are happy that we are responding to queries and concerns, of the public during our Facebook page. They can also call out 1025 and raise concerns, rather than having videos taken at the airport, talking to people who are angry. And sometimes we do have to, look at the way we also report at the airport. Some people, you just go there to look for fault. But in actual fact, Ministry of Health is doing a lot of work. We are doing a lot of work in implementing public regulations in any country. It is not easy. So one side must be offended, and the other side also will look at the interest of the public. So when we talk about public health, we are looking at the interest of the public. So we are not here to impose things that will cause a lot of confusion or cause problem or trouble to people. But we are here to protect them and the people they are going to. Because, for example, where you're coming from, we don't know your status. So if you come now, we allow you now to go and interact, knowing that you are coming from travel. Sadio, in this country, once you travel, even just to go to Senegal, you come. You have 2, 3 visitors coming to say, hey, hello, how are you? How was your trip? Much more somebody coming from Europe. You expect to have a lot of visitors, and you'll be contacting with those people. That is why we are protecting those visitors, your family, your immediate family, and yourself, and the entire population. So we want to appeal to them. We take it easy with our staff at the airport. We have well-trained people at the airport, disciplined people, hard-working and committed people. And then they have been working 24 hours around the clock. And I think sometimes it's not easy. So let them understand. If they have challenges, they can easily go to them. But if you come from the airport, they ask you to go for quarantine, then you get angry, then you start talking to them in an angry mode. That cannot solve your problem. We want to appeal to them, talk to them nicely, raise your concern nicely. I am very sure the issues will be addressed. That's the appeal I want to make to people who are traveling in the country, into the country, for example, coming from, not only hotspot country, but people who are traveling, into the country, and also people who are traveling outside the country. When they come to collect their certificates, you can see even, some days here they come and harass our staff here just to collect a certificate. But you know that your sample is collected, for example, in the morning. And then they ask you to come at 2 o'clock, and you decide to come at 8 o'clock. Then you start to form long queue at or maybe everybody start to control at our gate. Sometimes getting into our office it's a big challenge for us sometimes. But we have to be with them and talk to them. And we'll continue talking to them to explain to them what we want. Because if your sample is taken in the morning, we expect you to come out between 12 and 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Because the sample have to be processed. The processing takes some time. Sometimes when the samples are many, for example, 600 samples, for example, and the tray, for example, takes about 100. The minute they have to take the tray inside, maybe 6 times. So some of those, so if your result doesn't fall into those ones, it becomes a challenge. So meaning you have to wait for a while. But at least we make sure that people get your test results a day after when they get the samples are collected, which we are really improving on that. It used to be 3 days or 4 days, sometimes 1 week. And that was the beginning. But we improved gradually. So I think it's something that we want to appeal, And I'm sure some people may be offended. They might not be happy with our system. Yeah, because this is the first time some people are experiencing. In fact, we're all experiencing a pandemic. But when it comes to epidemic, we all know many people have an experience. Some people have an experience with that. But this pandemic, every day is a learning process for all of us. So we are learning and we are identifying the challenges, and rest assured, with their support, we can be able to move the agenda forward.
So every day is a learning process, and people say COVID-19 is here to stay. The medical experts have been scrambling for a year to find a vaccine for the virus, up until recently when we had a breakthrough. How is the Gambia government trying to access a treatment for COVID-19? And if so, which one are we opting for?
Actually, we are strengthening the case management. The doctors, the capacities have been built, and then we are also having facilities to be open in the Bansang and Soma. These are the treatment centers, and as well as North Bank West, and in addition to Ndemban and some 1 or 2 hotels, and as well as addition to Wencho, which is the sanatorium. That's for the side of treatment. And then we got the required equipment and then materials that are supposed to be there, especially at the sanatorium, under the coordination of Dr. Bakar Jain and his team. They did an excellent job at the treatment center. And then when you come to prevention now, that's about vaccination will be one of them. And then, as you know, there's a lot of talk about the vaccine. And the Gambia government and the Minister of Health will never give any vaccine to any individual that has not been proven to be safe. So any vaccine we are giving to people, it's going to be a safe vaccine. Imagine we are going to start with health workers if the vaccination should start. Meaning that we are telling people that we are taking it ourselves. So that should be assurance from the Ghana public. That's one aspect of it. And also we know that because many of our health workers get contact with other people. So protecting them at the initial stage will be our priority for now. But also our intention is to vaccinate the entire population. But perhaps the resources will not be adequate at that time, and I'm sure government will chip in. That one I'm very sure of that. And then we're also working, the ministry is working very hard with the partners like World Bank, Gavi and others, at least to make sure that at least vaccine is available for each and every individual in this country. And then we will also communicate to the public as to the target population for the vaccination. Because every vaccination program has a target. The age group, for example, you are targeting. Every vaccination program have that. So we have already developed the vaccine plan, and this vaccine plan contains a lot of things like the logistic arrangements, the coordination, the management of in case of there is any effect as a result of the vaccination, and also the communication and community engagement components. Each of those have been categorized in the plan. It has been costed, and now we are now waiting for the availability of the vaccine at country level. If the vaccine is available, we'll get back to the public to say the vaccine is available in country. And the time we are going to start the vaccination program also will be communicated to the public. And we will develop messages and materials around the vaccine itself. Looking at the safety, looking at the age groups, and then maybe the intervention areas. All those things will be identified in our message booklet. And we will use that now. We will give it to the media also. To now help us to start sensitizing the public. Because knowing that, from our experience as a sector, anytime we want to introduce new vaccines, there are misconceptions around introduction of new vaccines. or there may be rumors around the vaccination, and that will cause some bit of crisis. And that's why a few of us have been trained on the crisis communication and rumor management, so that when there are rumors around anything, we also try to respond to those rumors as they occur. And then, looking at misconception, I'll give you a typical example. We had one vaccination program, the tetanus toxoid vaccination campaign in 1995. There were a lot of resistance. People say it's a family planning means of family planning trying to cut down our population. And because we were targeting young girls at the time, it was a big challenge for us. But after rigorous communication, we were able to address those barriers. But even with that, we were able to go back to those communities, even after 1 year, about 2-3 years of vaccination. And we have realized that most of those girls that have been vaccinated and they are married, they will all end up having children. That's a typical example. And then we just tell them that whatever we are doing, introducing into the Gambian population, we are not going to introduce something that is going to cause harm for the population. Same thing we have for the meningitis campaign. I mean, we know we had an outbreak in 1997 in which many people lost their life, and then particularly Upper River region, Central River region, and part of North Bank. We ended up having the MEN-A vaccine in 2013. The introduction of that vaccine also has been a challenge. There were a lot of misconceptions around the vaccine, but with rigorous communication, we were able to address it. And we were able to increase demand for the vaccination, and people were even calling us to say they are interested in getting vaccinated. So we will do the same thing. Polio also, you know about it, polio vaccine. When we started, it has not been easy. We had a lot of rumors around the vaccine, and we also got a lot of misconception around the vaccine. So we were able to break the barriers. And then at the end of the day, demand for the vaccination was really on the high side. So likewise for COVID, we started talking to the media now, so that when it is available, we are going to use it, because we already got the WHO approval. And we also want to remind the Gambian population, several vaccine trials have been conducted in this country and West Africa alone. And then key among them, the MEN-A vaccine, you have the hepatitis, the pneumococcal vaccine. They were all tried in this country. And other countries like Guinea-Conakry, Mali, Burkina Faso. These are the countries that we are there, because for the meningitis, we were in the meningitis belt at the time. So all those vaccines have been tried. The hepatitis one was tried in the Gambia here. And now we are giving it to children, and that is why we are able to cut down the number of children that have hepatitis. So you can see that these vaccines are very helpful. So likewise for the COVID, we are going to do the same thing. We're going to raise awareness. But we also want to make sure that we focus on identifying rumors around the vaccine and responding to them and addressing those rumors, and also identifying misconceptions around the vaccine. What are the typical misconceptions that we were seeing or we are expected to see, and we also prepare for that. So the vaccine plan contains all those things. And we also put up a communication, social mobilization and advocacy components, and as well as community engagement. Why we are engaging the community, we'll be engaging the community, is that first we start with the district chiefs. We have about 40 of them in this country. So each of the district chiefs now, after the engagement, we expect them to go and engage their village heads. And that's what we have been doing in the previous campaign, and it has been proven very much successful. So as a result of that, district chiefs are going to engage village heads. And as I tell you, we have about 1,889 villages in this country. So if all the district chiefs were able to engage all that district village heads, automatically we are able to reach out to all those villages. And then all the village heads also go back to engage their household heads. And all the household heads also engage their family members. So I think, Sergio, by doing that, we'll be able to reach out to the population. And then, in fact, now, when we do that now, we are now trying to inject the message into the populations for them to know the importance of the vaccine. And we want to tell them that the ministry will only introduce vaccines that have been proven effective and safe by the World Health Organization. And when approvals are done, the Ministry of Health will still have no other option but other than to implement the administration of vaccine to the general public.
Thank you. Welcome back. And now the U.S. Ambassador Richard Pascal this afternoon visited the FATU network to thank the network for the role it played in the 2020 U.S. election. Our editor-in-chief Lamin Jai was selected by the United States government to cover the election, and Ambassador Pascal was at our office to present Lamin's certificate alongside a congratulatory cake. It comes as Joe Biden gets inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States. The U.S. Ambassador later spoke with our editor, Lamin Jai.
Hello there, this is an interview with the Ambassador of the United States to the Gambia, Ambassador Richard Carl Pascal. Well, today marks the inauguration of Joe Biden as President of the United States. And their ambassador joins me in the studio today. He actually came to thank the FATU network over our role in the U.S. elections 2020, the coverage and the contribution and the role we played. So he was here to thank us, but also to talk to us about the inauguration of their new president. Ambassador Pascal, thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Ambassador, first of all, what do you make of the role of the Gambian media in the U.S. just concluded U.S. elections?
Well, first, thank you so much for the FATU network and for your commitment to making the time, really. Normally, every 4 years we do election coverage, and we invite foreign journalists to the United States under our International Visitor Leadership Program to do a tour of the United States. And of course, with COVID-19, we weren't able to bring journalists to the United States, and so this was all done virtually. And I just want to express my appreciation to you and to FATU Network for making the time to do this all virtually. I know that sometimes the times that they had these sessions were not necessarily normal business hours here when we account for time differences, but so thank you very much. I think the role is really critical because, of course, the nature of American democracy is different. Every country's democratic systems function a little bit differently, and the ability to bring reporting on how American democracy actually is structured under the Constitution, how the different states actually have the authority and sovereignty as states to establish their own electoral laws, obviously within certain parameters, and then in terms of the conduct of elections, and also importantly the campaigns themselves, and responses and reactions from voters, Americans that you were able to contact and speak with during that process. But I think the ability of Gambian media to cover that and to provide insight into how the American election process worked was really invaluable to explaining to the Gambian public. Of course, we have such a strong connection between the Gambia and the United States. We have obviously a lot of personal connections. We have many Gambian Americans, many Gambians who are residents in the United States, and the Gambia is a small country. I don't think I've met a single Gambian that doesn't have a relative somewhere in the United States or some other connection to the United States. And so there's an intense interest in what's happening in America, and the role of the media to try to explain that was really invaluable. So thank you again.
And what this election was quite remarkable. The most expensive election in the history of the United States. Record number of voters, really. As an ambassador of the U.S., what were some of the lessons that you learned out of this election?
Well, I think two key lessons, and I think the first one is that Americans are passionate about the democratic process. As you noted, record turnout in voters in this election this year. Very hotly contested races, and not just the race for president, but the race for members of the United States House of Representatives, for the United States Senate. The diversity among candidates that were running this year. A great example is in Georgia, which elected its first African-American senator to the U.S. Senate, and the first Jewish senator to the U.S. Senate in the runoffs that just occurred earlier this month. But we also had remarkable diversity from both parties actually running for different seats in national legislative bodies. But also when you go to the state and the local level, in many states, the local elections for governor or their own state legislatures were also very hotly contested. And so it shows that I think, especially given the record turnout and the record attention being paid to this, that Americans are passionate about the democratic process. It also does show, I think the number two thing is that there are deep divisions in the United States over the direction of the country on various different policy matters. And people want their voices to be heard, they want to be able to speak up, and they want to be able to influence those decisions and the future of the United States. And that obviously requires a commitment to our constitutionally mandated and established freedoms and the legally implemented electoral processes.
And one thing that will also remain etched in the history of your country has to do with the fact of your outgoing president refusing to accept defeat. He had all along, all throughout, said that this election was fraudulent. In the short period that I have lived, I think this is the first time an American president would, continuously insist that the election was rigged in favor of his challenger. And what we have seen is that he has never accepted defeat. What do you make of that?
Yeah, to be very frank, I am slightly more than 5 decades old. I won't reveal the exact number, but in my time of, and as a young teenager, adolescent, I was a policy and politics sort of a fan. I followed it closely. I would watch literally the proceedings from the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House on cable television. That's how a bit of a nerd I was when it came to this. Certainly there are many different aspects of this presidential election that have been unprecedented. You mentioned the turnout, the passion, obviously. And yes, that is in fact unprecedented. And in my lifetime, and the acknowledgement came extremely late that the election was over. I take heart in the statements of many, many different elected political leaders and appointed, to include former Attorney General Barr, that contradicted the unfounded allegations of fraud. Now that said, certainly every election, and especially one as massive and on such a big scale as the United States, we have 350 million people, 50 states, etc. All coming to an election on the same day. Granted, there are early voting processes and mail-in voting processes, but it's a lot to manage. And certainly there were some procedural issues that need to be looked into and to look at correcting. But certainly, when the former Attorney General of the United States says that there's no widespread fraud, I take that to mean that he meant it.
You take that, but now here we are. Joe Biden finally takes office today. In terms of the future, what do you see for your country? Your country is battling the coronavirus pandemic. Over 400,000 people have died. Joe Biden coming in. How does the future look like for your country in terms of dealing with all these challenges? Coronavirus, the economy, the issue of race?
These are all very, very important topics. Let me start with COVID-19. Clearly, we are suffering in the United States. As you noted, over 400,000 deaths. There's a reasonably, I think, credible assessment that we'll hit 500,000 deaths in the very short future, near future. I know that President-elect Biden has committed to a 100-day challenge for people to please wear face coverings and masks. I would just relate to please. I would love to see Gambians and adopt a 100-day challenge and wear masks. I don't see much mask wearing when we're out. I know. Thank you so much. I know we respect and honor those preventive measures. You're right. The question of race relations, the question of economic opportunity, the question of ensuring that the children of America and the future of America are educated and develop the skills necessary for the economy of the future. All of those are critical issues that we are wrestling with. But this isn't the first time in my life that we've wrestled with these issues. One of the things that I think makes the United States quite unique is that we have faced a lot of very challenging times in our history, even our recent history. And we tend to hold a mirror up to ourselves pretty well. And we're pretty self-critical when it comes down to it. And we do look for ways to improve and to make ours a more perfect union, which, of course, what we are always striving to do. But making it more perfect means that we're not perfect. There is no perfection in this world. But we certainly are striving to become more perfect.
Let's talk about, I know I should have asked you this before we got to the Joe Biden inauguration, but the issue of the riots. This was something that really took the whole world by surprise. That America, with all the democracy, how their democracy have progressed, for them to do such a thing, that was something that a lot of people did not see coming. What do you? I mean, you issued a statement expressing your repugnance over the act, over what really transpired at the Capitol. Looking back at those events, the ugly events, the attack on what a lot of people would call the seat of American democracy, how did you feel when you saw your compatriots, your fellow countrymen, heading to the Capitol in a bid to overturn the election in favor of Donald Trump?
Well, I was horribly dismayed and angry. I put that in the statement, that statement wasn't written in Washington. It was written right here in Banjul, right here in the embassy. It is simply unjustified and indefensible that a small group of people would seek to change the course of a constitutionally based and mandated electoral process and the functioning of the elected representatives of the people in the House and the Senate in a joint session of Congress under the auspices and the leadership of the President pro tempore, who is the Vice President of the United States, to follow the law and the Constitution to validate the Electoral College results, which showed a victory for President-elect Joseph Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. That small group of people would try to overturn the electoral results, the constitutional activities of the rest of their fellow Americans, is unacceptable. There are obviously, as I know you're following, active investigations on a national level. The FBI has made dozens, well over 100 arrests at this point in time. Charges are being brought against people who did invade the Capitol in that mob action and commit those acts of violence. Charges of murder have been brought against people involved in assaulting the Capitol Hill police officer who died that evening from the injuries he sustained. But no, just simply put, unacceptable, indefensible, and those who perpetrated this act and those who incited that mob need to be held to account.
So as you go about installing your new president here at the embassy, how do you plan on marking the day? Very important day, huh?
Oh, thanks for that advertising opportunity. On the embassy's Facebook page, we will have a Facebook Live session at 3 o'clock today to talk a little bit about the inauguration, the history of inaugurations, and the significance. There are some things that are just sort of procedural. So on every inauguration day, embassies around the world, and I've done this over the course of my almost 30-year career in the diplomatic service, that at 12 noon on Inauguration Day, you remove the photographs, the portraits of the outgoing President, Vice President, and Secretary of State. And then, of course, we wait until we receive the new ones of the new President, Vice President, and new Secretary of State. Yeah. It does take a number of weeks to get those. Any references on our social media pages to the outgoing administration will be updated and changed. And of course, and those are just sort of the physical manifestations of that electoral change, that democratic process. But in a normal year, we would have, not only would we have had a big Election Day return event, gathering, inviting dozens and dozens of people to join us, we would have had an inauguration event as well to have people join us to watch the inauguration and to celebrate this visible manifestation of democracy in action.
And finally, you happen to be one of the many U.S. ambassadors who is serving at a period when you have one president leaving office and you have a new one coming into office. How do you intend to work with the Biden administration, or Joe Biden, your president, in pushing the interests of your country here in the Gambia?
Well, all American diplomats who are appointed, and especially career Foreign Service officers, are apolitical. We do not serve any political party or any political candidate. Our job is to provide the very best information, insight, analysis, and recommendations to our elected leadership, and from our elected leadership, those who are appointed to positions of authority and leadership within our government. And our job is to seek to assist them in developing and implementing their policies as they develop them and roll them out. And that hasn't changed for decades. And so that's what we'll be doing. We will be seeking to ensure that new officials coming into the State Department and other foreign affairs agencies in the United States government are aware of the key issues here in the Gambia and the key areas where we're engaging with both the Gambian government, the Gambian people, civil society, etc., to support the Gambia's own democratic transition here and the electoral process here in 2021. This is a pivotal year for the Gambia, and obviously looking forward to the public engagement on Gambian electoral processes.
Do you have a final comment, Mr. Ambassador?
I just want to, again, thank you. I want to acknowledge the critical role that the news media plays in any democracy, healthy democracy. And I look forward to seeing the reporting from Fatu Network and others in the news media community here on the key issues that Gambians are concerned about. And as always, it's a pleasure to see you, a privilege to be here, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So that's the Ambassador of the United States speaking to me there. Today is the inauguration of Joe Biden as President of the United States there. That is it from me. Thank you for...